So for my extra credit video, I decided to talk about sensitivity and specificity, just because that's a concept that was very hard for me to grasp. So up here first, I have the definitions for sensitivity and specificity. So for sensitivity, it measures the proportions of positive cases that are correctly identified, and how you calculate that is like the number of true positives over like the total number of individuals with the illness. And the specificity is kind of the opposite, where it measures proportion of negative cases that are correctly identified. So when they're referring to like true or false, that usually refers to whether or not it aligns with reality. And positive or negative results, or the word like positive or negative is like the actual result of the test. So here, like below, I use the example of HIV. So if one were to test positive and they actually have the disease, that would be considered a true positive. And if someone were to test negative and actually not have a disease, that would be considered a true negative. Both of those are considered, obviously not in this situation, but to be considered like the best case scenarios that could happen, just because like you actually like know what's really happening and you aren't being misled. And then for a false negative, that's when the test is actually negative, or when you tested negative but you're actually positive. And then false positive is the opposite, where it's you tested positive but you're actually negative, which can be kind of concerning because it can be like financial burden, and then you're putting chemicals in your body that you don't need. So that is why I decided to pick sensitivity and specificity. So another example we could do that is relevant to life right now is COVID-19. So if you are subjected to a true positive test, that means that you actually have coronavirus, because your test came back positive and you do have the disease. But if you were to obtain a false positive test, that means you were told that you were positive and you were made to quarantine, and you can't go to work and all this stuff, which can be considered like a financial burden and an emotional burden because you're quarantined. That can be considered a false positive because you don't actually have it. And a false negative would be that you do actually have the disease, but you don't think you do, which will make you feel like, oh, like I'm fine, but you're actually infecting other people. And then a true negative is when you are completely negative and it aligns with reality, which is obviously the best case scenario in this situation. So